Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for another weekly installment of Play These Decks If You Want to Hit Mythic. But basically these are the best performing decks of the meta for the week based on the track data from UntapedGG, the companion tool that runs alongside MTG Arena. It's a free to use tool, tracks your win rates, card collections, give you deck suggestions to build, stuff like that. Very useful tool if you want to get started with that. It's free to use. It is in my video description down below. But what we really try to do with these videos is take a look at what are the best performing decks and configurations over each week. Try to highlight if there's any kind of notable changes in kind of stock lists. We're looking at standard in this particular video. However, if you're interested in other formats as well, historic and alchemy, I have separate videos that come out each week for those. So definitely check those out. Before we jump into this, as always, if you do enjoy the content, greatly appreciate it if you can. Drop a like. Post a comment, and if you haven't done so already, consider subscribing to the channel. All are free and easy ways to help out the channel, as well as lets you know, try to get out a video a day in terms of gameplay content, so definitely something worthwhile. So we are looking at standard best of 1 to start off. We're looking at a sample size of 120,000 games for the week, January 16th to 23rd, platinum to mythic rank, so pretty good population overall. Best performing deck of the week, and that has been pretty much every week. Mono white aggro. Really the distinction between these a lot of times is what variation of mono white. So if we look at this one here, this is the exile based. We see sometimes they'll play the, I forget its name now. I forget the name now. The training 1-2 that can blow up enchantments. So this version here is playing like the exile effects. So you have like Sungold Sentinel to power up these Stonebinders familiar. Full 4 of Intrepid Adversaries, and then you're playing 6 exile creature effects in the Brutal Cathar and Skyclave Apparition, along with the portable holes. So a little bit of an older take on it, 23 lands, this particular one with the Faceless Haven. So mono white consistently puts up high results in the format. We see kind of the deck that looks to try to attack mono white in being mono black control. Blood on the Snow style deck with Meathook, so access to 8 sweepers in the particular build. This version here looks to use some of the treasure dorks to ramp into more of a planeswalker heavy focus. Also have some more targeted removal in Infernal Grasp, Soul Shatter as well to back it up. The copies of Duress are to hedge against the more Is-It style decks. This deck's very bad into turns, so it gives you an option to kind of combat it there. This version's got like a full best of 3 sideboard in some cards. They just imported their best 3 version and played in best of 1 for the most part. We have mono red goblins surprisingly putting up a high result, 65% win rate. If you are budget conscious, this deck is fairly cheap to play. You have just 5 rares, Hobgoblin and Den of the Bugbear, but it seems like this deck's putting up some results this particular week. We have Rakdos Control, just another kind of Blood on the Snow style deck. You kind of ramp up. This one's creature heavier, where the other one was planeswalker heavy. One thing to mention, forgot to on the onset, I do post the deck lists for some of the top performing decks in the video description. So if you're looking for exportable deck lists, you can just grab them from there. Do note that there's a character limit for YouTube, so I can't post them all. I just post kind of the top few. If there's some that are missing you're interested in, just drop a comment. I'll try to pull whatever the most recent is to help out. Then we got Stompy, kind of the tried and true Chariot version, putting up some decent results. And then Is It Turns? The one thing I like to look at with the Turns deck is what they're using as their sweeper package. It helps you to be able to play around things. So I actually think this version here is not the best suited for best of 1. I like the version that's playing at least 1 more Cinderclasm or a second copy of Burn Down the House. If we're looking at kind of the most prevalent decks, they're all creature based, so having access to a sweeper is really important because a lot of these decks could spam and go wide pretty quickly. Having said that, I haven't played Is It Turns too much recently. We have Selesnya Humans, so kind of akin to the mono white aggro deck. Hopeful Initiate was the card I was trying to think of earlier. Humans-based synergies, you get Catilda to kind of ramp up ahead. Hamlet Vanguard could become a big chunky dude. Torrens can just spam the board wide, and then you have Sigarda for some card advantage. Orzhov Control, again, just choose your Blood on the Snow. Actually, is this version not on Blood? Ooh, okay, so this one's kind of unique. no Blood on the Snow, which I feel like if you're going to play Doomscar, just play Blood. It gets you utility. Only one copy of Meathook Massacre. Interestingly, this version's on a full 4 of Strict Proctor. So this shuts off some of the exile effects, things like Brutal Cathar, but looking like in the format, it doesn't really shut off anything in mono green. Doesn't shut off like the die effects, shuts off some of the treasure elements from Enter the Battlefield, but Proctor is just not as good in this format at that, unless I'm missing something compared to some of the other formats. Like in Historic, it's really good because you have Lotus Field, there's all the life gain kind of decks that play into it, so there's a lot more Enter the Battlefield style effects. We see Jeskai Turns, it's just another turns deck, but splashing white for both Doomscar and copies of Sunset Revelry to kind of keep you alive against the aggro. We have Zombies, kind of cool with Necroduality, kind of spam the board wide. Generally like copies of Meathook Massacre if you could squeeze it into these types of decks. Once serve as a board wipe, you get a lot of value from your stuff dying anyways, but against control it kind of insulates you and kind of forces them, well, if you sweep my board, you die. Another take on mono white, this is like the version I was mentioning that plays Hopeful Initiate. Seems that this week though, that the exile based version just going a little bit larger, more interaction to the board. Having just more copies of Brutal Cathar seems to be more effective. We have Clerics, another take on Goblins, and then just kind of the run of the mill. We got a Teamer mid-range pile. Hello. Into Coma, so just kind of the Teamer ramp, take turns, some copies of Magma Opus. Okay. Actually a deck that I wanted to show. This is a deck I played for a video that came out on Sunday. Went 4-0 with it pretty commandingly in Mythic rank and was just absolutely dumpstering these creature decks. So it's kind of a like Mardu, so black-white for the most part, and then red splash tokens deck. So playing copies of like Stesnia Uprising to get tokens each turn, burn down the house for both tokens against control decks or sweeper against the aggro decks. We got the Meathook Massacres, but Wedding Announcement paired with like Edgar and everything, Deadly Dispute for card advantage. I was dumpstering like creature decks. The deck felt really, really sweet. So if you want to check that out, like the video, I'll post this link as well, but deck felt really, really strong. Probably something I'll play a bit more in standard to see if it's legit or not. So that's for best of 1. And then let's pop over to best of 3. 9,500 games versus 120. There's a clear consensus. Best of 1 is the preferred format. We see mono white again being the kind of the top dog, 71% win rate. This version here, you have the Valor Stance main, Hopeful Initiate, so slightly different configuration. We're also seeing copies of Reidane in the main board. No Skyclave Apparition in this version. See all the Skyclaves in the sideboard, but interesting to see how these mono white decks slightly tweak. Best of 3, I would imagine, is going to have a lot more Izzet, so something to consider. Also, just keep in mind, this was on 24 lands, having a slightly higher density of 3 drops in this version. See mono green. Things I look at in like the mono green list, are they on 2-mana accelerants, yes or no? Are they on, so this version here is only on 2 Rangers class, not 4. The amount of Snakeskin's Veil, if they're on, sometimes they have a natural growth in the main, sometimes they keep it in the side. So little kind of changes week to week to kind of see based on how the meta is playing. This is a Teamer mid-range, so it's kind of just Teamer treasures. It's Gruul deck that splashes blue for counter magic. Another copy of Stompy. We have Gruul mid-range. This is black-red mid-range, splash green for Halana and Elena, as well as copies of Eska's Chariot. This deck's been around a couple weeks now. And then kind of a more dragon-y oriented version as well. You got some Gragmas, but this version seems slightly better in that regard. Interesting. None of the Izzet decks tracked for this week have really been performing. It seems like mono white's really just pushing it out in that regard. If it is this, like I haven't played best of 3 in a while, if it is this like creature heavy, moving into even something like Blood on the Snow style Meathook Massacre decks could be quite effective. What I liked about this deck is it allowed you in the early game just to trade to kind of build up your resource. So Shambling Ghast and Skullport Merchant both let you ramp up, so if you need to Meathook earlier, or even there's a few games like Burn Down the House or Meathook to sweep a full board turn 4. So you can kind of block earlier, where sometimes the control decks, they they don't play to the board, so you end up just taking a lot of chip damage. But yeah, check this one out as well. Play some games with it. Tell me if you think it works or not. My one kind of conclusion after playing it was I was probably going to cut the Paladin class for a 4th Vanishing Verse, just to have a little bit more interaction. But I like the suite of Vanishing Verse and Rite of Oblivion, just to blow up a whole bunch of kind of troublesome permanents, and notably Exile as opposed to Destroy. So it kind of gets around anything coming back from the graveyard. But that's standard for the week. Let me know what you think. If you've been playing kind of any off the beaten path decks that have been working out well. And as always, if you can, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Great way to help support the channel for free. Thanks for watching. Have a great one.